Okay, I think it's 2 o'clock by my computer clock. Does everyone agree? Okay, so I think we will make a start. So welcome everybody. And I know we've had some extraordinary meetings before, but this could certainly be classed as an extraordinary meeting. Robert, could you please do the honour and open the meeting for us?
Thank you there, Bernie. E te atua, tēnei te mihi aroa ki a koe, tēnei rā. Anei rā ngā kōrero heimu i a koe, e pāne ki te kaunihera heimu i a tātou. Anei rā ngā kōrero inoi ki a koe, ki te hapaitia tō tātou whānau, te motu, te whenua o tō tātou orohe o horo whenua. Nō reira e te atua, tēnei te mihi aro ki a koe, kia tau, kia tā kātou. Te ata whae tō tātou re ke ahiu korati. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ke āmene. Kia ora tātou.
All right. Thank you, Robert. As we've had a number of practices with this sort of technology, I'm sure we will cope really well. But just a reminder to keep your mute button on unless you wish to speak, or raise your hand so you can let me know what's going on. But we will now get into it. So do we have any apologies?
No apologies.
Thank you, Karen. So we had, in terms of public participation, we had one member of the public write to us to make a submission to this meeting. The advice that I've had in regards to that is that the issues raised by this person have been covered by evidence presented to the Horizons Regional Council Hearings Commissioners considering Council's application for resource consents for the discharge of live-in wastewater at the pot. The hearing panel has not delivered their decision on Council's application, and any discussion by Council on these matters raised by the submitter may prejudice the process. For this reason, the request for public participation rights have not been granted. Okay, thank you. So we will now move on. Late items. Any late items, Karen?
No late items.
No late items, thank you. Any declarations of interest?
I'm possibly declaring some declarations of interest for the Tokomaru wastewater and also the Matakarapa wastewater projects there, Bernie.
Thank you, Robert. Can you just confirm that you are definitely putting in a conflict of interest, not possibly?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on to confirmation of minutes. On page 4, we have number 5, the meetings from Council meeting the 11th of March 2020, the meetings of our extraordinary meeting of Council on the 20th of March 2020, and the meeting minutes of our extraordinary meeting on the 23rd of March 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder that these are a true and correct record? Thank you. Move, Sam. Seconded. Thanks, Chris. All those in favour, raise your hands, please. I can't see some of those hands. Please put them in front of you, not to the side. Thank you. All right. No, that was unanimous, so none against. Thank you. So announcements. Shortly we will be asking Lisa to give us an update on the issues around COVID-19. But there is one other announcement that I just want to put at the front of the meeting rather than at the time, is that there has been a suggestion that we remove the agenda item 9.1 relating to fees and charges, and that it becomes part of the review that the Financial Resilience Working Party would deal with. My recommendation is that we leave it on the table with a view to determining that no increase in fees and charges for the next financial year be implemented. So I would rather have that discussion when the time comes for that that agenda item rather than remove it from the agenda. Does everyone, I will nod your heads or put your hand up if you agree with that. Right, thank you. Okay. So Lisa, are you there? I'll hand over to you, please, to give us that update. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. So look, as everybody knows, we're sending out the situation reports on a daily basis, Monday through to Friday. So hopefully that covers everything that you need to know. But just to confirm that we are still under a national emergency, and that has been extended out until the 15th of April. And we have activated under the emergency management team. We're working remotely. So there is a difference between an emergency, activating an emergency, and then also activating under the IMT team. So hopefully that's all clear and that you're understanding all that information that I'm sending out to you every day. Happy to take any questions if you've got any.
Joe, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor Burney, and thank you, Lisa. I do have to say I appreciate those daily updates through the week and understanding the work that's being done there by the team at Council. Thank you. I just wondered if you could give us some indication in terms of the welfare response and that number, that's that 0800 number that's available to the community. What are the key concerns that are being raised around welfare within that or within Council through that call number?
Sure. So we've only had, to date, from the 3rd of April, 42 welfare requests have come through. The majority of them are for people wanting food parcels, which we handle directly through a national source. So that's in either the Salvation Army and Red Cross. And that is the main agencies that are taking care of those. So currently at the moment, the 0800 number that people can use is gathered and goes through to the Palmerston North Contact Centre. They provide a spreadsheet to us twice a day, and we're able to then triage those requests further and direct people to the agencies that are taking care of them, such as MSD or food parcels or whatever their request is actually for.
Anyone else? Okay, so thank you, Lisa. And as Joe said, we do appreciate those daily updates. They're very informative and do keep us in touch with the real things that are happening rather than the anecdotal things that we often hear in our little bubbles. So it is important that we do receive those. I suppose for the members of the public that are listening or watching this, we are not just looking at what is happening on a daily basis around the COVID-19 issue. We are very much looking at how we're going to get out of this situation and the long-term effects that it may have on our community and the issues that we are going to face. And there is much work being done in that space, and the community will be informed as soon as we have made decisions in that space. So does anyone want to add anything to that? Sam?
Just a further announcement, if that's possible. Yeah, look, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Reverend David Atkinson, who is a local live-in resident who has set up a daily radio broadcast on his amateur radio station frequency. And so he's broadcasting each day at 10:30 AM on 88.3 FM. And so there's local updates, local information, also relaying various council updates and press releases for those people who don't have access to the internet. So that's that reaches to most of Levin, and people are also able to access that through a podcast at Spreaker, SPREAKER.com. So thanks.
Cheers, thank you. And I have already had an interview with David, so well aware of the thing. So thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
And keep safe yourself. So we now move on to the proceedings of committees, and 7.1 the proceedings of the Community Funding and Recognition Committee. Could I have someone please to move and second the receipt of that report? Thank you, Piri. Thank you, Todd. All those in favour? I need you to put your hands up. Thank you. Against? Thank you. So just while I'm at it, to who is ever taking notes of the minutes, can it please be recorded in that committee's minutes that I did attend that meeting, that I was in attendance, because I am down as actually seconding a motion, so I suppose it should be listed that I was there. So now 2.4, that the Horowhenua District Council ratifies the community development grants as follows. Could I have a mover of that, please? Thank you, Piri. Thank you, Todd. All those in favour? Thank you. And 2.5, that the Horowhenua District Council ratifies the community consultation grants as follows. Thank you. Moved by Piri, seconded by Todd. All those in favour? Thank you. Right. So we now move to the mayoral report, which I will move. Could I have someone second that, please, as receipt? Thank you, Joe. So nothing further to add from me. If you have any additions that you would like to make in terms of your own activities, now would be the time to do so. Robert.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Just concerning the King Te Hautia's hui in the beginning of March there, and it was really appreciated, from the hapu that yourself, Todd, and Joe were able to attend to the pōwhiri, and because of some of the things that were happening with the COVID-19 epidemic, we eventually had to shut the hui down earlier than what we expected. But however, we were able to talk about some of the great things that that we were trying to do within the iwi space for Tainui, Ngāti Raukawa, and the iwi within the motu. Just to be able to talk also about some of I wanted to say how to give a shout out to the community peoples that are working behind the scenes within our communities, the leaders of our community peoples in the Horowhenua. And I want to just to congratulate them for the great work that they're doing within our communities, to be able to meet some of the needs of our communities in the wider space. We know that is happening within our Shannon volunteer group and our volunteer groups and also Foxton and Levin as well. And so I just want to be able to say that we've been part of that whole effort to be able to support our peoples in such a trying time for all of us. Kia ora.
Thank you, Robert. Can I just say that I was honoured to be part of that pōwhiri at the marae, and really enjoyed the many stirring speeches that we listened to that day. Besides the danger of getting sunburnt because it was so hot, but no, it was an honour to be there. So thank you. So we'll now move on to the monitoring report on page 13. Could I have someone move and second that this report be received? Thank you, David. Thank you, Ross. Any questions or clarifications sought on the monitoring report? There being none, we will move on to the Chief Executive's report. page 17 of the agenda. Again, could I have a mover and seconder for the receipt of that report? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Todd. Any questions? Or David, do you wish to speak to that report first?
Can I just take the report as read, Your Worship, and either myself or responsible officers will be able to answer any questions that the members may have.
So maybe if we go through this item by item rather than take questions across the report, because it is a reasonably lengthy report. So any questions relating to 3.1, the Responsible Camping Working Group? None, thank you.
Sorry, I just had a question around, did we have any current issues in the Horowhenua actually regarding the Freedom Camping Act at this stage? Any issues around our area that's come to light that we should know about or not?
Just in terms of COVID-19 you're referring to, Victoria?
In general.
Yeah, no, nothing that I'm aware of at this stage. I don't know if Lisa's still there, but I can't recall hearing of anything in relation to current activity associated with freedom camping.
Thank you.
No, I can confirm there's nothing, Victoria, and the police are aware and are managing those areas as well.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.2, Foxton Futures. You wish to say something, David?
Yeah, look, just in view of Shane Jones's announcement, and I know he was fielding media questions about the repurposing of the PFG. I just wonder how much we can share at this stage about our knowledge of how that repurposing will impact on the Foxton Futures application.
Through you, Your Worship, can I get Nikki Brady to answer that question?
Hi, everyone. Hi. So obviously the coverage which has been released has stated the intention of the repurposing of the provincial growth funding. We haven't received any direct correspondence from the provincial growth fund or the provincial development unit directly. I think the opportunity that we do have, however, is acknowledging that this also has a relevance to the Crown infrastructure funding and other discussions which are being had by government, given that this project does include a significant amount of infrastructure around the amenity works, the Paratau Gardens redevelopment, the walkways, the cycleways, and therefore we're really confident that this could actually take that new direction if that was the path for us. We have had feedback from the Provincial Development Unit to say that this had actually already started to go through the process ahead of the COVID-19 lockdown, and therefore the cross-government correspondence had already taken place, and again that positions us quite well if this was refocused. So I guess from my point of view, that would be the path that we would be hoping to pursue, which just shows us, I guess, in the preparation that has been done by the community in this piece of work, that we were able to adjust to any new path, irrespective of the funding avenue.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else? Okay. Sorry, did you want to say something, Ross? Or you? So you're still not on? No. That's better.
Pretty good. It's better. Some technical challenges here. I just listen, Bernie. Just wanted to acknowledge the work, the team, the massive amount of work that Nikki and her team have put into this Foxton Futures. It's just widely important for obviously Foxton and the wider district, and the outcomes could be quite incredible. So just really keen to understand as this goes along the challenges, but also the potential, and once again, just acknowledging the work everyone's done. It's bringing a whole lot of single streams together that have been, I guess, out in the ether for a long time now, and this is the ability to bring them all together and really force a really good future. So once again, just acknowledge that work, and fingers crossed that we can continue down this path.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 3.3, the Northeast Levin stormwater. Sam?
Yeah, just a question around, obviously the consent process is underway with Horizons. And so I expect that some ratepayers might be asking whether it's prudent and appropriate to continue to allow more discharge and connections to the stormwater system in this area. And that's discussed at page 20. And so I had just wondered what assessments or analysis has been taken within HDC around allowing those further connections and discharge, and whether that's the right approach at this time.
David, who's going to respond to that?
Are you able to do that, Brent McGuire?
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I can respond. I guess insightful question, and it's starting to, I guess, highlight the notion of individual developments versus the accumulated effect of multiple developments. So what we've done at this stage is we have sized the reticulation network to handle today as well as the future. And as was pointed out in the article, we are allowing an upsizing of the pipes at this stage to then be reconnected to the existing network, such that the upsizing of pipes will create a storage capacity for us, and we won't be discharging any greater stormwater flow downstream than we do today. And that's all subject then, of course, to the new pond, if that gets consented and constructed, as well as a downstream wetland facility we're contemplating with NZTA as part of the O2NL project that will then transform that whole area. So at this point, the design for the pipe network accommodates the lots that have been proposed by the various developments.
You.
Mayor? Okay.
Is that me?
Yes, Chris, your turn.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I had that reply, Brent, but I do still have concerns. There may not be any more water at one point in time going through that throttle, but if there are extra developments and more hard surfaces, that water is going to be released over a longer time frame. So I do have concerns about the properties at State Highway 57, the junction there. They had major problems in the last storm event that we had. And I'm just wondering, if we do have flooding and people's properties are damaged, who is liable for that damage if we allow subdivision developments to go ahead before the scheme is fully in place?
Oh, I'd have to get back to you with a liability question. That's entering a sort of legal framework, which at this stage I don't have the answer to. The engineering component of that is the way in which we size the network itself and allow for storage for the various return periods of the rainfall events themselves. The pond will be relatively large, and then the secondary ponds further down the stream will be designed and sized to store significant rainfall events. At this stage, we're comfortable our design will accommodate within the best use of our CapEx as much rainfall as possible.
Can I speak out there?
Robert, yes, please.
Just checking to see whether the CIA from Ngāti Takihuku, has that been progressed any further? Yeah, and because of the wetlands that are adjacent to some of the Koputuro stream, I mean, there's been significant areas of wetland restoration that's taken place around that area. So I just want to know whether, the hapu are involved in, progressing that.
Again, I'll get back to you with an answer on that, but my understanding is the answer is yes, that's progressing. And also alongside that with the O2NL development of their wetland process. So things are starting to be tied together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have a go?
Sorry, Bridget.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon.
I'm anyone, actually.
So can Brent just confirm that within that development, any future housing that goes in there will be going to on-site storage, or will that join the network that's going to be put on for the roads as well, please? Because there's this false notion out there that when you put a development in, it attracts more rainfall to that little area, which is nonsense. And so much of the area that's developed actually discharges straight into the ground. Can you confirm that, please, Brent, whether the housing will be required to go into storage on site?
In that particular area, we're looking to design a scheme that collects it all and discharges it into one contiguous network.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, so now moving on to 3.4, the water demand management. And Brent, maybe you could be again the one that answers that, could you? I mean, could you just explain that in more layman's terms for us, exactly what that means?
Kevin Peel will answer that question.
Here, is he?
Yep.
Okay.
Kevin Peel.
Good afternoon. It means that we are finding a lot of leaks now that we've got this in, and we're going to be in a good position to deal with them as we come out of the lockdown and everyone gets back to work. So the basically what they're able to do is see how much water is going into an area and how much is coming out, and working out where the leaks are, tracking them down so that they know where to look a bit better. Basically, we're finding the leaks, we can now start to deal with them. So it's starting to work. Layman's terms.
Thank you. Any questions for Kevin around that? Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so moving on to the 3.5, the Housing Action Plan and update. Nikki, is there anything you want to add to this?
Hi again. Nothing to add, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Nikki? Joe.
Thanks, and thanks. It's good to have that update there, and to know that there are some conversations that are live. I think it refers there, one of the actions around 4 times kind of conversations that are live with potential developers. I do wonder though, if at some point post COVID-19, and once we get through whatever we decide with the annual planning process, if we could have a workshop around the housing action plan, just to bring everybody up to date with what's happening and have some of those conversations, either in a briefing or a workshop, whatever is deemed appropriate.
I'm more than happy with that. Happy to arrange.
Thank you. That will just add to the briefing program. Thanks. Any other questions? Nikki, you might as well stay online. Is there anything you want to add to the growth strategy 2040?
That'll actually be David McCorkindale.
Oh, will it now? Wow. Your change of duties, eh? David, are you online?
Yes, online.
Thank you.
Nothing further to add in there, unless there's any questions.
Okay, no questions. You got off lightly. Thank you. Moving on to 3.7, Council Mark Program. As you see, current assessment is due for the end of June, and there's quite a bit of work going leading up to that. Whether that's still, David, no word on that, whether that will likely be postponed?
We're planning as if it's going ahead, but I've got no doubt it'll be being considered now on whether there is to be a delay or not, but we're not waiting for that call. We're proceeding with the program of work that needs to be completed leading up to that assessment. But as I say, it may change.
Thank you. 3.8, the Foxton Beach Wharf. Any questions? Sam?
Look, I understand that this this item may have been around for a while, so apologies. Being a new councillor, perhaps I've missed some previous relevant updates, but I'm just trying to get my head around why we are seeming to invest and pay for a process that is essentially related to dock land. From what I understand, this is dock-owned land. DOC has responsibilities to ensure that the area is safe, and it sounds like there is some sort of stalemate, presumably around cost and who is responsible for certain things. So I'd just like some further explanation around what it is that we're actually proposing to invest and why.
David, do you want to answer that, or Brent?
Brent, if you can just cover cover that, and I'll come in if I need to.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. It's the right question to ask, Councillor Jennings, in a sense, because it is a bit of a minefield of land ownership versus asset integrity plus amenity for the community. And you're right, it has been around a long time, and I've only been around a short time. When I look at it, it is a very easy construction project to repair, but a very difficult project to get unilateral agreement on. And so just addressing the cost issue to begin with, our costs are extremely minimal at this time because there's not a lot to do in terms of detailed design. And so I'd just like to recognise Councillor Brannigan, who's been quite helpful navigating the complexities around the community out there as well. And the whole idea of that sort of flow chart really is to put some pressure back on DOC to do the right thing. Now, the way we do that is by giving them an engineering concept that we've got the community and the local boating club there in support of, to just explain that it's a relatively painless and simple process from which we can repair the damage. At that point, we then all have to get together almost like a class action to then go off and get the thing consented. And then once that's done, the idea would be then we pull resources and get this thing built and fixed. The whole idea of the diagram that I showed in the SEAS report is the fact that if we're there, we may as well add a little bit of amenity, hence the idea of just extending that footpath down to the newly constructed wharf area. Couple that with right now, there's never a better time to seek some central funding for some of these little ideas to get projects that otherwise would never get off the ground underway. So we've got a perfect storm of issues, but also we've got a perfect opportunity to, I guess, gravitate towards a solution. So the whole idea at this stage is to use the process to try and drive a collective agreement.
David, did you want to add anything about the Department of Conservation's actual stance on those sorts of pieces of work?
So look, the feedback that we've had from the department in discussions to date is that they don't see this sort of coastal infrastructure as a priority for them. And that's understandable because they've got a pretty huge asset register that they have to consider where their funding priorities might be, and they don't see this as well as a number of other sort of coastal infrastructure assets as a priority. that being said, they're very, very keen to work with the district council and the community on very much a collaborative approach on how that particular area can be enhanced. Horizons Regional Council have also been very, very supportive of any activity in that particular area. I think the way that Brent has formalised a means of actually protecting a pretty important piece of recreation infrastructure in the Foxton or the Manawatu estuary in a way that will minimise the cost impact on council is probably something that we should be able to get across the line rather than putting it back onto the Department of Conservation to actually do it by themselves.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Bernie, if I can, yeah. Thanks, David, Brent, and thanks, Sam, for the question, because it is a important question. I think probably to shed some historical light, historically, again, it's been that particular area has been under DOC ownership under the Reserves Act for a long time. But of course, they're an absentee landlord, and the landlord is actually HTC, Community Board, and the community. And it is as everyone will know, a pretty important piece of infrastructure. So it's about priorities. It's not a DOC priority. It needs to be ours. And I think we're stepping up to do that. And I like Brent's, as David outlined, I think Brent's approach is a very good one. And at a meeting we attended at the Boat Club recently, unanimous support for that approach. So I think it's finding a solution, and we just need to get it.
Thanks, Ross. Okay, moving on to the annual plan 2020/21, which is
sorry, Ben.
Sorry, Robert.
I was trying to unmute my audio. Just a question to Brent. Brent, is there any historical iwi issues that are being brought into the picture around that whole area? I know that Papangaio is one of the ancient taniwha that it has is a part of that whole system, especially concerning the matakarapa and also that whole area. So I just wondered whether has that been talked about with the iwi groups in that space?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I guess the short answer is not yet. Part of the approach is to have a story that we can talk about with confidence that there's actually a project in the first place. And so our approach to date has been to talk to Horizons and the landowner DOC to get sort of high-level agreement that we've actually got a project to pursue before we can effectively go and talk at length to the other parties. So we're not far away. Once I get DOC over the line, then we can go and tackle those sorts of questions, which are very important to us.
Okay, I'm just wondering, would it be really in our sort of in terms of what we're trying to do is to be able to include the iwi in that space quickly because of some of the issues. So a lot of the iwi, especially for Ngāti Raukawa, are going through treaty claims at the moment. And I'm sure that if we have that approach of being able to talk alongside the iwi, because we're already doing it now, I think that would be really helpful for us to be able to, have a conversation with them.
Yeah,
just in that regard. So whilst we haven't engaged with the affected hapu directly around this particular program of works, we have engaged with them in the past through the Raukawa Hapu network around our intention to try and foster a solution around the problems that we've got with the old jetty and the consequential impact that it's actually having on the wharf. Whilst they want to be involved going forward, they're very supportive of us taking a lead to identify a solution going forward. But as Brent has indicated, we haven't engaged with them directly on the scope of work that Brent's looking at right at the moment, but we will do so once we've got the key stakeholders supportive of the approach that we're undertaking.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. We now go to the annual plan. So, David, do you want to talk about this first and then questions?
Look, it's and we have talked about this a little bit leading up to the council meeting today. Look, we're in a process that we started prior to lockdown. So the consultation process started after we'd adopted the draft annual plan. I think the key thing to point out, not only to the members, but also to the members of the public that are listening to this broadcast, is that things are changing and evolving as we speak around the impact of COVID-19. And the realisation is that we have to accept that there might have to be some changes to the draft annual plan that we're consulting on now before we finalise an annual plan at the end of June or towards the end of June. So whilst we really want to have feedback from our community on what we've actually put out by way of a draft, it's very important to get that feedback. There may be other components that the members of the public might want to add to that process that we're going through around submitting to the annual plan that might be directly related to some of the things that they would like to see given the change that's occurred in our environment around COVID-19. Look, and the process is, as I say, underway. There may be some flexibility in terms of how we might take this forward, but as I say, it's got to be accepted that this is not a final version of the annual plan, and it's extenuating circumstances where there will be changes to the draft as a result of COVID-19.
Sam.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I've got two questions. So first question is in relation to whether there should be, whether council could essentially pause the process while further work is done. And I note that Horizons Regional Council has taken that approach to their annual plan process, and what the consequences of a pause right now to go away and do further work would be in terms of timelines, working back obviously from the 30th of June, which is the point at which we need to have adopted an annual plan. And then I'll come back for the second question if that's okay, or did you want me to do that now?
Look, I'm happy to answer your first question, Councillor Jennings. The difference between Horizons Regional Council and ourselves is they had not finalised their draft annual plan. So they had not started their consultation process. We have started their consultation process. So it was easier for them to put a pause, given that they could actually make changes to their draft annual plan, which we can't do at the moment because we've actually adopted a draft annual plan. That's not to say that there might be some flexibility around some timing of the annual plan process. We have got some headroom there. We're not sort of 3 weeks away from needing to adopt an annual plan. I think probably the advantage of going early as we have is that we have got that headroom towards the end of the process. What it will allow us to do in the time between now and the sort of consideration of the annual plan by council is to put those additional scenarios in front of the council, and also potentially some changes to the draft annual plan before it's actually finalised. It's probably just a little early today to say that we should actually change the time frame, but what I'm also saying is if there is a need to change it, we can do so.
Thank you. So actually, this feeds nicely into my next question, which is around. I've had a lot of feedback that there is, I guess, a desire for the submission period to be extended beyond the current date that's been notified, and there's sort of the main reason there has been that people are saying, well, I'm focusing on much bigger things at the moment, about the survival of my business, survival of my family, that kind of thing, and so they're not really in the right space to be able to tune into this process. On the other side, we've obviously got people that are using this period of lockdown to engage and to look at the draft annual plan, and some of those people are probably people that we haven't previously engaged with, so that's a positive. But in terms of the scope for extending the submission period, my understanding is that the only consequence for that would be that we would then need to push back our hearing timeframes. Is that correct, or are there other things that I'm missing in terms of consequences of extending the submission period?
So through you, Your Worship, we had a chat about this morning with the senior leadership team, and look, as I said, there is some headroom. We could make a decision next week to extend the submission period, and it wouldn't have. Look, it does have an impact, but it's manageable within the time frame that we've still got ahead of us. It may be that we do have to review our hearings process, given lockdown and all that sort of thing going forward. But if the council had a desire to extend the submission period, that could still be made next week.
So, David, can I just, the flyer that is going out is still progressing, and with a date of submissions still being the same as what we had planned originally?
If I could leave that to Dave McCorkindale to answer.
Yes, so at this stage, the submission flyer does contain the original submission closing date on it.
Thank you. Terry, did you want to say something?
Robert?
I think that means it's too late, is it? But anyway, my question was around the review of the Foxton Beach freeholding account, which is going to happen alongside this annual plan. So if there was an extension of time, the same would apply for that, I'm guessing?
Yes, it would.
Right.
Yes, I just listening to the conversations with my community, and I just wanted to say that a lot of the peoples in my communities they're just saying the same thing, that they got other things they're focusing on at the moment, and and I think that submission would be extension of that submission would be really great for us to be able to accommodate that. Thanks.
Okay, it sounds like we could have thousands of submissions then once we get through the 4-week period, does it? Yeah. All right, so moving on. The draft government policy statement on land transport. Any questions or clarification on that? Christine? We can't hear you. That's better. No, you just turn it back off.
Okay, so I was trying to get your attention for the earlier item, which was the annual plan.
Sorry.
I totally understand that people have got other things on their mind at the moment, but we're only 2 weeks into this thing, and I can imagine that if it continues for longer, people are going to have it on their mind for quite some time in the future, and it could be even worse. So I would just wonder whether it would be better for people to use the time now to make their submissions, because I can't see it getting any better if contractors are suddenly having to ramp up and try and get business and moving into it in a couple of weeks. They're not going to be wanting to make submissions then.
Noted. David,
Can I just add something?
Yes.
Sorry, I'll let Mr. Councillor Allen speak.
Look, just briefly. So I guess we're hearing different things. The people I'm speaking to are comfortable with the time frame, and they're also comfortable with the fact that they have more time now than they've ever had to do it. So this is just my feedback. But I guess my second point is we need to be, a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to CEO Clapperton, we would need to sort something out really at this meeting, wouldn't we? Because this will require some resolution, and short of calling another meeting very soon of council, should we make a decision today as to whether or not we extend the period, and we need to have good reasons if we do.
I knew you were going to come up with something like that, Councillor, and well done. My suggestion through you, Your Worship, is that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor be given delegation to extend the submission period for the 2020-21 annual plan on the, and I can't think of the right words, it might be just simply as required based on information available by the 17th of April. But I would probably give the delegation to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor to make that decision. That would be my suggestion.
And in response to that, I think that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor would consult first with the other members of the council to ensure that they were comfortable with that decision. So
the resolution would be that the delegated authority be given to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor to change the submission period time, and that would be the resolution. You just need someone to move and second that, knowing that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor would be consulting with their fellow members before they made that decision.
Karen, have you managed to get that?
Yes, I have, thank you.
Could you just read that out, please?
Right. Sorry. Sorry. That the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor be delegated authority to change the submission period, annual plan submission period time, and added to that, noting that the Mayor and Deputy Mayor would be consulting with the other elected members before making that decision.
Could I have...
Can we, sorry, Your Worship, just a couple of wording changes that we need to make, but we can finalise this outside this meeting. It should be to amend or extend, I think it's extend the submission period, right. And we certainly don't need that a bit around consulting with the with the other councillors. Right. It's just a resolution given to, or delegation given to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to extend the submission period on the 2020-21 annual plan.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Robert, are you moving that? Thank you. Seconded. Thanks, Ross. All those in favour?
Could I speak to that?
Certainly. Sorry, David.
Yep. So look, just a challenge here. We've been connecting with our communities, particularly over the last week, and I know in the background we've identified particular groups we can go to, we've been speaking to. I cannot see value in us delegating that role when we're meeting today, when we have formed our own view, presumably, about whether or not the deadline of, I think, the 24th of April is the appropriate one or not. So I'm wondering why we would place another layer in between direct democracy and delegation. I understand that delegation is appropriate on occasions, but we're meeting here today. We've formed our views, we've connected with our communities, and I'd prefer that we make the decision today whether or not we extend the period.
Fair enough. Okay, so we do therefore have, anyone else want to speak to that? Christine.
Thank you. I would have to say I agree with David. Also, how would giving that delegation affect this flyer that's going out, which would have to have a date on it, I would imagine.
David, has the flyer been printed?
Need to check. My thinking is it probably has, and it was all set to be delivered starting next week. I can look into that and potentially come back with a time frame. I think if I could just take a moment to comment as well, I think if you are considering an extension, some thought needs to be given how long. Obviously, we don't know the full extent of when the lockdown may or may not end. That had been part of some of the discussion prior around whether an extension is required or not. But obviously, to give people more time, it wouldn't necessarily be about making it so that people can come and connect with officers and things like that, just because of they wouldn't necessarily be able to if the lockdown continues and things. So I appreciate the comments by Councillor Mitchell, who's identified that we have this window now. I have had some message while I've just been talking, which says the flyer has been printed.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we do have a resolution on the table and it's been moved. Sorry, Christine, were you seconding? You weren't seconding that, were you? So at the moment, Ross, you seconded it. So I'll put the motion that the resolution that we give the delegation to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor to decide whether we extend the submission process for the annual plan. So all those in favour? We have 1, 2. All those against? Right, the motion is lost. Okay, so that brings us back to the discussion around whether we extend the submission time or not and make that decision now. So would anyone be prepared to put a motion or any discussion required? David?
My personal view is we do nothing, which means that the status quo remains. The 24th of April remains the deadline.
Thank you. Todd?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with David. We don't know how long this is going to last, and I think everything's been printed and put out there, and people, I know there's a lot going on at the moment, but they've also got a lot of time on their hands if they're at home to put submissions in, and I think to move forward, we stick with the status quo.
Thank you. Piri, did you want to add anything?
I was going to say the same thing as Todd. It's printed, let's go.
Okay, all right. So I now saying that therefore the mood of the table seems to be that we don't extend the submission period and that we will leave it as it is. Thank you. Right, so as I said, moving on, 3.10, the draft government policy statement on land transport. Any queries or questions on that? None. Let's move to the Crown Infrastructure Partners topic, 3.11. Any questions or clarification needed on that? None. Thank you. All right, so moving on to the delegations register update, which is page 32 of our agenda.
Sorry, Bernie.
Sorry, Wayne.
Just on 311, the Crown Infrastructure Partners. How is council progressing with projects that may align with that offering from the government?
Brent McGuire can answer that.
Thanks, David. So the deadline for applications is Tuesday next week, the 14th. So over the last 7 days, it's been a lot of information coming back and forward from the Crown as to what comprises an application. At the time of writing, it was a situation where we explained we were looking for a couple of projects that hit the $10 million mark as standalone. What we've discovered is other councils around the country are starting to combine numerous projects into programs that they're putting forward. So we've done the same thing. So at this stage, we've got 6 projects that we're progressing to be submitted by Tuesday. Gladstone Green, which is off the back of NZTA, who's committed to the roundabout at Queen Street 57. And that allows us to push ahead with an application to proceed with some infrastructure associated with that and Gladstone Green. That meets the criteria. We're also looking at arterial access roads. There's been a big push from NZTA to get on with the design for O2NL, which opens up opportunities for us now to contemplate how that's going to affect our network, so we can put those forward. And then the way in which we're assessing our land holdings, we're collecting all of that up. In the CE's report, I mentioned Foxton Beach. That's an example of something we could make shovel ready if need be. We've also taken a look at cycle trails, and we're looking at also through Nikki's work, putting in a parallel application for Foxton Futures. So there's a lot of people working on this, trying to collect up things that are really attention grabbing at that level. On Tuesday, they'll receive thousands of applications from around the country. And we're trying to pitch things that we think really hit the mark in terms of employment opportunities, local content, things that combine infrastructure plus housing, plus some wellbeing activities. And I think the teams have done a great job. So it did get in the way of some other things we were looking at, but it's one of those things that if you don't ask, you don't get. So we've put a lot of effort in the last 7 days to put some applications in.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, anyone else on that? All right, so my apologies if I'm not giving you enough time to respond. I'm just trying to look at my agenda as well as look at the screen, and sometimes the two don't coordinate quite as quickly as they might do. But just unmute your mics and yell out if you do wish to say something. Thank you. Okay, so page 32, the delegations register. Could I please have a mover and a seconder that this report be received? Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Todd. Okay, any discussion?
Can I just introduce this for a moment, Your Worship? Look, the purpose of this, and it's a statutory requirement that we have to have, is to make sure that we've got an updated delegations register. We had some changes within the organisation following the passing of our previous Group Manager Corporate Services. I would ask, though, that on page 24 of the delegations register, at the top of that page where there's reference to the consents manager, compliance manager, and customer experience manager, we actually delete customer experience manager, please. So subject to that change, I would recommend that the council adopt the updated delegations register.
Sam, you had a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, I completely understand that the changes to this register are related to the change in structure, and so there's no real substantive change. However, obviously, with it being on the agenda, I took the opportunity to look at it in a little bit more detail. And page 13 of the register, under 7.1, fourth paragraph there, refers to the Chief Executive having delegated authority to exceed an $1 million limit in situations where there's a whole of life or a multi-year contract. My impression there is that wording in the register is potentially too open-ended and need some further work. So what I would be looking for there is potentially to have a discussion around this in the FAR committee context, where I had understood we were going to be looking at the delegations as a whole in any event as part of our risk work, because obviously delegations link to the level of risk appetite that a council has, and so I'd be very keen to ensure that that specific item is subject to some further work, and again in the context of some perhaps broader consideration of delegations through the FAR committee process.
Yeah, look, through you, Your Worship, the register can be updated at any point in time and can be considered by council, and I would happily have a discussion presented through to the FAR committee on the area that the councillor Jennings has just highlighted. But as I say, the register doesn't have to be adopted, just once a year. It can actually be done at any time and updated.
Any other queries? Okay, so Piri, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just to say that I had 1 or 2 reservations and support Sam in having this looked at a little bit more.
Thank you. Okay, so the resolution is that the Horowhenua District Council adopts the delegation register attached with subject to the amendments as outlined by the Chief Executive, effective from the 9th of April 2020. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, David. Thank you, Todd. All those in favour? Against? Is that a vote against, Robert?
No.
No, thank you. Sorry, it was just the timing thing. All right, so the motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on now to page 35, the 8-month financial report. So I'll move receipt of that report. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Wayne. Does Doug want to talk about this, David, or introduce it?
Look, Doug is available to answer any questions that there may be. Just remembering or reminding the members that this report and 1 or 2 others has been transferred from the FAR committee meeting that was cancelled a couple of weeks ago.
So any questions? We're also incorporating the Standard & Poor's report, which is an article relating to councils carrying growing debt, and also the economic dashboard for the growth dashboard for the district, dated March 2020. Have you got a question, Robert? No? Okay.
No, I don't have a question, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Just moving around.
I do, Bernie.
Okay, Wayne.
So just with regard to the possible success of those projects that we have put forward to the government infrastructure spend, can someone tell us how, if they were successful, how does that look on our balance sheet? How does it look on our benchmarking? Where does that enter? What is the repayment of that? This is a new type of funding, and do we carry that on our balance sheet, or is this a grant from the government or a suspensory loan? I think we just need some information around it, if we could, please.
Okay, if Doug or Brent wants to add anything, and I'll just tidy it up or tie it up if I need to.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, there is no actual guidance at the moment. We're all waiting for the same answer. What we've been asked to do at this stage is to submit our wish list and try and grab people's attention. There is, at this stage, from my research and my contacts, been no guidance as to whether or not the full funds are available, or partial funds, or how that is going to be transferred. Bearing in mind there's multiple sources. So NZTA also has their own minor works fund for streetscape repairs, etc. Our understanding that some sort of advanced FAR relationship between us and them. The Crown Infrastructure Partner thing doesn't come with any guidance. PGF money kind of does, but it's been repurposed. So things are moving so fast that I may be able to answer the question tomorrow or the next day, but unfortunately I just can't answer it today.
Doug, hello, thank you. Actually, I've a question for you. Well, you may not be able to answer this, but do you have any early indication of what our capital expenditure was at the end of March? And had that gone up much from February?
Oh, I haven't actually looked at it. It is available. I just haven't looked at it, Bernie.
Okay.
I'm actually looking at that tonight when I get back to it. In terms of what it looks to me like it would be on our balance sheet, any work that we do. Although the government are talking about, they're talking about buying government LGFA bonds. So there was a bit of an issue with liquidity of LGFA bonds. So people weren't actually wanting to invest in LGFA bonds, which would have dried up them in the bond market for local government. So the central government have actually said that they'll buy, I think, 5 billion of local government bonds. So that's opened up the market again, because back in at GFC about February 2008, we couldn't borrow any money. We couldn't borrow anything at all, and that was what we're going to be facing until the government came and said that they would buy local government bonds. So we're still able to borrow. There is some talk from local government New Zealand about the government relaxing some of those covenants that we've got. The maximum 250. There's some talk, between local government New Zealand and the government about relaxing some of those covenant ceilings. There's also continuing discussions about special purpose vehicles, whether that would extend to us or not, I'm not sure. So a bit like Brent, we don't really know. We haven't been given any guidance, but I'm aware of a lot of discussion happening in the background.
Any other questions for Doug? Okay, thank you, Doug. So let's move on.
Just one last question for Doug. Does he see that the interest rates are going to climb anytime soon?
Definitely not.
Which means they will.
In fact, I'm expecting them to drop. We've got an interest rate reset on the 15th of March, so I'm expecting our interest rates, cost of funds to drop even further.
That's the 15th of April, Doug, not the 15th of March.
My apologies, April, yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to page 56, which is the fees and charges for 2020/2021 for the Food Act and resource consenting planning. So first of all, can I please have a mover and seconder that for receipt of this report? Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Joe. Okay, so we have resolutions 3.3 and 3.4 in front of us. One that the attachment A and attachment B be approved, and then for any submissions to be heard by the hearings committee. So as I indicated at the front of the meeting, my proposal is that we actually make a resolution today that we recommend that no fees for the Food Act and no resource consent planning fees be increased at all for the 2020-2021 year. Could I have anybody wants to discuss or ask for clarification around that? Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Benny. Yeah, well, I'm not opposed to that at all. Probably just a question for Doug. What does that do to the budget, if anything?
Are you still there, Doug?
Yeah, sorry, I was a wee bit distracted with a text. Can you repeat the question?
So we're talking about the fees not being altered for next year, that they remain the same. The question was as to what effect that would have on our revenue.
Oh, well, certainly, you know, it wouldn't help in terms of our revenue. Whether it's material or not, we'd have to do a scenario on that. It's probably not hugely material in terms of total dollars.
Through you, Your Worship, Megan Leyland may be able to answer that question directly.
Thank you. Hi, Megan.
Hi, good afternoon.
Did you hear the question?
I did, thank you. I can confirm that with regards to planning fees, a 0% increase in fees would represent about, as opposed to the 5% recommended in the report, would be about $20,000 in income. And for the Food Act fees, it would represent about $5,000 in income.
Thank you. So in light of those figures, has anyone got any other questions or clarification they want?
No, through you, Your Worship, I fully support that. That we don't increase these fees. This is a sector of our business community that are going to be impacted by what's occurring right at this moment, and I think these are I guess fluid as opposed to not so fluid things that we can respond to quickly, and give an indication that as a council we're trying to think where we can perhaps have an impact, even though it might be minor. So I'm fully in support of that, and those figures are certainly what was represented to me when I asked this question earlier. So yeah, I support what you're proposing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so just Karen, if you could walk me through the process here, or David, just in terms of the resolutions that are there, do we have to vote on those first and then put a new resolution, or we put up a new resolution first?
Mr. Allen might be able to help me out on here, but you don't need to consider the two resolutions because they're only recommendations. They're actually haven't been moved or seconded. And in fact, if you don't do anything, essentially status quo prevails.
Thank you. All right. So, well, just confirming that everyone is comfortable with that, that we don't do anything, that we leave the fees the same. Can I just have a show of hands that everyone's in favour of that or not? All right, and those that are against that? No one's showing their hands. Thank you. Okay, so we are making that.
We just got David McCorkindale wants to say something.
I just need, it's probably a question that someone else might be able to confirm. I'm just concerned whether or not we do actually need to go through the process of consulting, even if it is on a zero increase. Whether David or Megan might be able to just answer that. My understanding is I thought we probably did still need to consult.
Yes, David, it was my understanding that we are required to consult on these fees using the special consultative procedures. the fees that were adopted last year were for the 1920 year. So unless we can, I'm not sure whether we can have a resolution to adopt those fees this year without them going out for consultation, or whether the resolution should be to consult on a zero fees increase.
Okay, thank you. David.
Yeah, look.
The complexities of legislation. Look, look, if we have to go out and consult on the fees for the proposed fees for the 2021 year, so be it. That's what we have to do. I think under the circumstance, it's probably a bit of a non-event. But if that's what we have to do, my suggestion would be that the council approves the fees that apply for the 1920 year for fees and charges for food acts and resource consenting be retained for the 2021 financial year. If we have to go out and consult, I think we would do that just as a matter of course. I just think the resolution should be that the fees are retained from the 1920 year to the 2021 year.
Thank you. David, Alan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, look, I think we're nearly there, Mr. Mayor. Just to be a little bit pure about it, I do agree with Mr. Clapperton's recommendation that we actually formally adopt the resolution that the fees be held at the 2019-2020 level. But I think 3.4 stands that we do have to go through the consultation, even though it may be seen to be symbolic, that we do have to give people a chance to put their hands up to willingly undergo a fee increase if they choose to do so. So my suggestion is that there's those two-part resolutions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just a point of clarification, please. Could I just get some advice around what happens if we do nothing? Do the fees simply end as at 30 June and therefore there are no fees? Or if we decide to do nothing, what happens?
A little bit unsure there. We probably need a legal expert to sort of be around the table at the moment. Look, I think Councillor Allen's suggestion of actually going through a formal process of the two resolutions that are there, if we have to go out and consult, we have to go out and consult. But it's on the basis that the current fees that we have are those fees that we'll use for the 2021 year. And look, we can determine the wording, appropriate wording for that, because I think the schedules have to change. So we've actually got, the schedules are actually inclusive of a 5% increase. What we're saying now is that there's going to be a 0 increase, and we would have to amend the schedule, but we can do that outside the meeting framework. As long as we've got an understanding, and I think that can be minuted, that there will be no change to the fees, but we'll go through the process to ensure that they're enabled from the 1st of July.
Thank you. Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay, so the resolution is that we now hold the fees that exist for the 1920 year, remain the same for the 1921 year, and that if required, submissions will be heard by the hearings committee. So just for process, Bernie, I think you can still have that first resolution, but I think your second resolution should be as 3.3 and as 3.4, knowing that attachment A, B and C have been amended. Okay.
To reflect the changes. So the first resolution is fine, yep. But I think you need to have the two second resolutions as they are formed on the agenda item.
Okay. So is everyone clear on that? what
So
we.
could I move that?
Thank you,
as
David.
Yeah.
Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Perry. Although, any discussion? So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? None. Thank you. Carried. Okay, so I'm conscious that it's nearly. Sorry, Ross, you want to say something? I'm conscious that it's 3:30. We've been going for an hour and a half. I'd like to give everyone a 5-minute break to stretch their legs and make a comfort stop. So I've put the timer on. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Hey, Bernie.
Yeah.
Mate, I've just been notified that I might have seconded. Hang on, I'll just
All
find
right.
it here,
Yeah, I
bro.
saw that. I got that note as well. We'll
And I
rectify.
think I did, mate. So I think we'll need to go back and adjust that.
We'll rectify that at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Do you want me to raise it?
You can do. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, are we ready to go? Still waiting for a couple to come back. Where are you, Councillor Kay Simmons? There we are. Thank you. Okay, I'll now reconvene the meeting, and we will move to the item on the agenda of the Levin Aquatic Centre hydroslide, which is on page 71 of our agenda. Could I please have a seconder and a mover and a seconder for the report to be received? Thank you, Wayne, and thank you, David. Right, so we do have a resolution in front of us. Is there any discussion on that topic? Wayne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, happy to contribute. Thank you, Bernie. While I support that we do actually need to repair and get this facility back and running, I just want to have added to the resolution that while we carry on with the consenting and the engineering requirement of this project, that in line with our social procurement push that we've recently discussed, that we hold off letting this job or tendering this job until we're through this COVID-19 period, and really try and focus on getting this work done by some of our local suppliers. That's what I'm trying to promote.
Sam?
Just a brief comment to thank Nikki Brady for her responses to a huge number of questions that I fired through to her prior to the meeting. Really appreciate the time and effort taken to respond to those. I think it would just be useful to just to get some clarification on the record for the benefit of the public, just to understand from potentially Nikki around the option 1, which is the do nothing, and why there is actually a cost associated with that. I think that would be quite useful just to just clarify that.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki.
Hi, everyone. So look, in the context of the do nothing option, I think really why we have recommended a cost there is that in our view, if we're doing nothing, that would probably insinuate that we should be removing the hydrocide facility. And just to give you an understanding of that, we on a daily basis, literally, and I'm sure a number of elected members receive this as well, receive questions from the community. That facility's been closed for over a year. The fact the structure remains on the outside of the building means that a number of people see that facility there, particularly new residents to the district, and therefore they're excited to come in and experience the hydroslide, only to find that it is actually not operational. And I think if we continue with that structure sitting there and making the decision not to do anything, it continues to send the wrong messaging to the community. And therefore, my view in putting forward the options was that if we were then removing the hydroslide, there's obviously a cost to remove the entire structure. That's not just the stairwell, that's the slide, that's filling in the area where the balance tank and everything is, making the site safe, and therefore there needs to be a cost associated with that. Alternatively, if the view was that we do nothing and we do not remove the facility, we need to understand the amount of inquiry and ongoing time that it takes, both for our entire aquatic facility, but also council office through communications team, and also probably yourselves, to continue to answer the questions that are going to come through.
Thank you, Nikki. Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie, and thanks, Wayne, for the suggestion. I think it's a very good one, which I totally support. My question is option 3, and it's something that's been raised with me, so I'd like to get Nikki's clarification on it. I think I know the answer, but again, good to have it there. In terms of option 3, the cost for option 3 is obviously less than option 2 to repair. Why is option 3 not the favoured option?
So in terms of option 3 being the composite product, which is to replace the stairwell, we sought a quote from an organisation who's quoted in the report paper from Wagner's. They have been able to provide a materials only quote. So that doesn't include obviously any of the labour, the cladding, the sheeting, a whole range of testing which would be required, survey work, geotechnical investigation and reporting, all of the things that would need to be done because they've only supplied a materials quote. And to be clear as to why they've provided materials only, they're actually an Australian-based company. Largely their work is in things like clip-on bridges. They've got a lot of work actually in New Zealand in that roading infrastructure space. They do a lot of work in the marine and wharves area as well. So they have 4 construction crews in New Zealand. However, in the case of this work being aquatic, which is not obviously core work for them, they would need to find subcontractors to actually do this work. They would need to come out from Australia to train those subcontractors, and they would then need to provide costs back to us to provide a full quote based on all of that work to be done. So all they could supply us at this point was an indication of materials only. And therefore, while that cost appears less, it is excluding a number of elements that would need to be added in addition to that costing.
Any other questions? David Allen.
Just a comment, really, acknowledging the point that Councillor Bishop has made about the social procurement or the buy local, you know, the simpler ways to express this. I want to say that I totally support where Councillor Bishop is coming from, because we are only just beginning to understand, and I know that Councillor Bishop is much closer to the action than me. We're just beginning to understand what is really going to happen to businesses in the short and medium term in our district. The only thing that I need to say in regard to that is the tension between backing local businesses and getting the best deal for the ratepayer's dollar. So it's a question really through to Mr. Clapperton around how that process might look, if there can be some sort of weighting process where we can give a good fair shake of the stick to local businesses under a weighting system, while at the same time being able to look the people who pay the bill, the ratepayers, in the eye and say that we have been fair in terms of trying to get the best deal too. Difficult tension, but I wonder if Mr. Clapperton could comment on a way through that.
Okay, I'll make an attempt, and Nikki can chip in if she thinks she needs to. One of the things that we would have to look at initially is our existing procurement strategy, and there's some processes in there that are well defined as far as procuring goods and services for our council. There may need to be, as a result of COVID-19, a review of that and look at some flexibility, I suppose, to allow us to do something like this. One of the key things that we would have to do, and well, in my mind, is we would have to have at least in the first instance, a fairly good engineer's estimate of what the cost of replacement might be. And that would be our guide to then go to the market. And we can place weighting on local suppliers, but at the same time, you put that weighting on just local suppliers by themselves, and it may discourage people from outside the district putting their price in, and what you then won't get is best value for money, because you'll just get local people, which may be, they may not have the skills or the resources to actually do the work that we need done in an efficient manner. So we would have to work through a process to make sure that there was good value for money coming through from those that actually were bidding for this piece of work. But it would be no different to any other work that we're going to have to do, or that might be available to us, post COVID-19, looking at ensuring that we're enabling that social procurement strategy that we might put in place, but ensuring that we actually get value for money from those, on behalf of our ratepayers. So just a little bit of work. I can't answer it specifically in this one, but a little bit of work to do to make sure that we have got a good process in place. But it may require just a revision of the procurement strategy and policy that we have currently in place.
Anyone else seeing? Christine.
Thank you. It does say that once repaired, the slide tower and hydro slide will last for 20 to 30 years. And I just want to confirm that that's 20 to 30 years without any more major maintenance or repair money being spent on it, please.
So the design is consistent with a 30-year life. However, as we've acknowledged in the report, it is a high chloride environment. So we are going to need to be regularly washing down with fresh water, which is consistent with other facilities, and hence why our recommendation includes for new freshwater hoses to be installed in the tower. So that's a component part to it. It is going to require spot touch painting. There may be scratches and scrapes and wear and tear, and those are all things that would be consistent with a steel structure that and any other that council owns that we will be obviously doing. But the design is intended for us not to have any significant maintenance in that period, but we will need to have a program, as I've just outlined.
Okay. Piri.
Two questions. The first one, whilst we're talking about the hydro slide, fixing that, which I support, can you, David, please confirm that that there's still sufficient budget for the upgrade of plant and equipment at the back? Because, if that's not addressed, then you're looking at a closing of a pool rather than just a slide.
Nikki, you are able to answer that? I understand that there's actually been additional budget, maintenance budget put in for aquatics.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So within the report, you would have seen that we completed condition assessments, not just on this particular structure that we're talking about now, but actually on all assets within both the Levin and the Foxton aquatic centres. And that provides us now with an asset management plan for both of those facilities out to 2036. And we've noted that we intend to utilise that asset management planning through our next long-term plan. However, we do have in the 2021 annual plan, there was a maintenance budget added. So you will see that featured in the draft annual plan, and that was for exactly that purpose, Pity, because previously we have not had a maintenance budget. However, in saying that, we also have not had the level of detailed asset management planning that we do now have as part of the work that the team have carried out.
And my second question is under the financial considerations, because it doesn't sound, it's which is a good thing. It's only 70 cents per household. And I wonder if you could just explain a little bit more around how you arrived at that figure.
Sure. So I had Doug actually model this scenario for us, because obviously, as you all know, the aquatic rating is a targeted rate. So I asked him to model based on the recommendation that was made in this report. And his financial modelling is what's determined that figure, which I've included as the financial consideration, which is the extra 77 cents per household per annum.
Are you comfortable there, Perry? Thank you. David, in light of Wayne's suggestion, I would assume that that doesn't become a formal part of the resolution, but sits alongside it. Am I reading that right? Or do we need to actually add to the resolution that's in front of us?
Through you, Your Worship, my suggestion is that we have a separate resolution. And the wording would be, and Councillor Bishop has provided some guidance already on this, that the resolution, whatever it is, 3.4, read that council, through its social procurement strategy, seek to engage with local suppliers to carry out this work once the COVID-19 crisis allows.
Do we need to add anything about our existing procurement policy?
No, and that's, look, I've added in one word, and that's seek to engage.
Okay.
So that seeking would sort of cover what might be required as far as falling under the procurement strategy and policy.
Thank you. Wayne, are you happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that.
So you'll move that. Could I have a seconder for that resolution, please? Thank you, Ross. Okay, so I'm going to put the two resolutions, 3.3 and 3.4. Firstly, 3.3, that the Horowhenua District Council approves an additional CapEx budget of $370,000, excluding GST, be included within the aquatic activity to carry out repairs to the hydroslide stairwell, option 2, over the 2019, 2020 and 2020-2021 financial years, plus 3.4 as said by the CE, because I can't remember it all, sorry. But you need that repeated? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for those two motions, please? Thank you, David. Thank you, Wayne. Any discussion or debate? None?
Look, I need to add to what the CE said. Look, going forward, we're going to be challenged in this space to try and play our part to be a key part of rebooting this economy locally. And I think it sits on our lap to do all we can to support our local industries who are going to be desperate to hold on to key skill set within their ranks and to look for some way of their business survival.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded. There appears to be no more debate or discussion, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? The motion's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Nikki, for the amount of work that you've had to do in behind the scenes in presenting this to us. It has taken, I know, some months, but to get that resolution this afternoon, I think is a great step forward. So thank you.
Just, Your Worship, before you go on, can we just also publicly acknowledge Brent Harvey, who's been working with Nikki to pull this report together.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Brent. Okay, moving on to the projects update, and Kevin is joining us, I assume.
Between Kevin and myself, we'll answer any questions that they may have, these members may have with these 4 updates.
Right, so we've got 4 project updates in front of us. If we go through them one by one, so first of all, the Tokomaru wastewater discharge. Any questions for that, Christine?
Thank you. Yeah, 2 questions. The first one is, please could we have an explanation of the cost overruns? And by now we should know whether we're going to need a hearing or not. Could we have an update on that, please?
Okay. So as far as the costs are concerned, the costs of the work to date to get to a point where we have an agreement by the affected parties and key stakeholders has cost us more than we budgeted. But in answer to your second question, the cost that's been incurred is potentially going to save us getting to a point where it will, if it does go to hearing, it'll have the support of the key stakeholders and key parties that have been involved in the discussions, and it will reduce the costs associated with the hearing and potentially an appeal. So it's spending a bit more money today to get the parties on board to spend less money going forward through the hearing process. The hearing has not been confirmed at this stage, the hearing date.
If I could just add to that, I think potentially the little graph is confusing. Where it says actual cost to dates, it includes all costs that have been on that to date. The 150,000 is what has been agreed to for this LTP period that we're in. So the other costs there were from before this LTP period.
Any further questions on that one? Okay, let's move to the next one, which is the Tokomaru water supply project. Any questions, clarification? Christine?
Yeah, once again, just an explanation for the cost overruns, please.
Same as, very similar to the one that we had for Tokomaru wastewater, but also noting that some of the costs that had been incurred were costs that fell outside the LTP process. But we are spending more than we'd anticipated to ensure that we've got parties agreeing to the consent and the consent conditions before we actually go to hearing.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Levin wastewater discharge project. Nothing there. Okay, to the Foxton wastewater discharge project. David, Alan.
Yeah. Just some confusion about who comprises the governance group on this? The project's looking good, looking fine, but I put a question through about who the governance group is, and I'm confused as to who actually is the governance group and their input on the project to date. I just wonder if I could have some clarification around that.
Yeah, look, and my apologies, Councillor Allen, for not responding to your email request. I've just realised that I hadn't actually responded. There are two governance groups, the internal governance group, which we have indicated with a reply to your original request. The second governance group is actually comprised of representatives of the interested parties, iwi, of those interested parties around Matakarapa Island. So we're working with them as an entity to assist us and to work with us on the project delivery. So that governance group is not a group within council, it's actually a governance group outside council. It's led by Hemi Tapiti, and then there's a few others. I think, Robert, are you on that group? Yes. And a number from a representative hapu of that particular area, and they have defined themselves as a governance group, and they're providing direct input to the project through the agreement that we had around Matakarapa Island. So that's the distinction between the two. So there's an internal governance group, and there's the external one through the, and I can't remember the full name, Robert, but it's the governance group representing the interested hapu on for Matakarapa Island.
Thank you.
Sorry there, David, Mayor,
Right.
just so that you know, Claire, there is the other group is under Te Runanga or Raukawa. So they're the governance group for the hapu and the iwi, and we're a subcommittee of the governance group for Matakarapa as a subsidiary group to that main group of collective people that includes 25 hapu o Ngāti Raukawa.
Thank you. David Allen?
Look, and thank you for the clarification. I just wonder if it would be helpful to have that documented so there is clarity, because clearly it's quite a layered process. And just in terms of transparency, I think it might be helpful to have that more clearly identified.
Yeah, and look, we have got an organisation structure that we can refer to, David. I'll get Hamish Lowe to ensure that that's captured in the next update.
Okay, just through you, CE, these reports, the project updates, I think it might be useful if we knew what had changed from the last project update. I often read these and think whether I often have to go back to the previous one to try and find out what has changed. Whether that could be added to those banner headlines that we have, because I don't necessarily understand what's triggered the project update, if you like.
Yeah, I think we've learned through the COVID-19 process that when you get your sit reps, you just refer to the red
yes.
Updates, and I think we'll probably do the same thing with these project updates. We'll just include any changes in red, and then we'll just make sure someone changes it out for the next update. So point noted, Your Worship.
Thank you, appreciate that.
That would be awesome, David. That would be awesome.
Thank you, Joe.
That would be great, because I would, and based on a question I put to officers, there will be some challenges, particularly as I understand it, around progressing work on this Foxton wastewater discharge program due to the COVID-19 lockdown that could impact. So I think going forward, it's going to be incredibly important that we understand what that impact means and what the impact is on budgets both this year and next year and how that's being pushed out. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sometimes there's a silver lining behind these things, and it does mean that what we thought we were going to spend prior to June, we're not going to. So that actually helps us in one other area of our financials.
Exactly. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so now moving on to the adoption of the Waitarere Beach Community Plan, which is on page 99 of our agenda. Could I please have a mover and seconder for the receipt of that plan? Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, David. Sorry, Karen, did you wish to say something? I can't hear you. You need to turn your mic off, please. Karen, can't hear you.
Please have a mover and a seconder for the previous report.
Oh, do we need to move it? Okay. So I'll move. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, David Allen.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So, back to the Waitarere Beach Community Plan. So a mover and a seconder of the receipt of that report, please. Wayne and David, that's right, thank you. So any discussion or clarification or questions on that? Christine.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is the first community plan off the ranks, isn't it? And I've been really pleased with the consultation process. It's been fairly lengthy, pretty thorough. And I know that the Progressive Association out there sort of had this shown to them just prior it coming to us, not too long ago, to just check through again. So I'm very happy to move that this is accepted.
Okay, in light of that, Christine, would you be prepared to move 3.3 that the Horowhenua District Council adopts the Waitarere Beach Community Plan, and 3.4 that the Group Manager, Customer and Strategy is authorised to correct minor errors prior to the document being published? Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Todd. Any debate, discussion? Robert?
Oh,
Oops. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I on?
You are on.
Oh, sorry. Just to say that, you know, it was really great. The consultation process going forward is a template for our other communities that are going to eventually have their community plans put in place. And yeah, I just wanted to support that, our adoption of this community plan for our communities of Waitarere. Kia ora.
Thank you. Joe?
I just want to celebrate that we've got through to an item on the agenda where we don't have to say it's affected by COVID-19. Well done, and great to have this to celebrate on the agenda. I'm thrilled.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so the motion is as put. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Against? Carried. Again,
Your Worship, Your Worship, oh, sorry.
I was just
you might be going to say what I was going to say.
I am, but you're welcome to pass on. Well, I know Katrina's here and David. Look, the work that's gone into this community plan, I think it's been pretty exemplary and a true testament to true community engagement. So congratulate you and thank you very, very much for the amount of work that's gone into this. You want to add anything, David?
No, I was just wanted to, I know Katrina was there, I just wanted to acknowledge the effort that she's put into this project and a number of people within her team. So yeah, thank you for that message, Your Worship.
Not to mention the outstanding engagement from the local progressive out there at Waitarere also that can't be overlooked.
Certainly, thank you. Okay, that is one thing before we move to publicly excluded. it has been brought to my attention that when we moved and seconded the minutes from the ratification of the grants to the through the Community Funding and Recognition Committee, that I nominated Todd as the seconder of those resolutions, and that Todd during that meeting had declared a conflict of interest. So I think it appropriate that Todd removes himself as the seconder of those motions, and that someone else at that meeting, Sam, that you are therefore put in place as the seconder of those motions. Are you happy to do that? Thank you. All right, so it will be recorded that the motions were seconded by Sam. Thank you. So I'd now like to move that we move to in committee to discuss a strategic property land purchase. And we're doing this under the guise of section 7 brackets 2 brackets 1, the withholding of the information is necessary to enable the local authority to carry on without prejudice or disadvantage negotiations, including commercial and industrial negotiations. So I'll put that motion that we move to in committee to do that. Can I have a seconder? David, thank you. Any discussion on that? Sam?
Yeah, look, I intend to oppose this motion to consider this matter in committee and exclude the public from viewing these deliberations on the basis of the interest that's been asserted, which is ongoing negotiations. And the reason for that is, I guess as a council, we're obliged under the Local Government Act to conduct our business in a transparent and democratically accountable way. And of course, I accept that there'll be circumstances where public excluded session is required, but they've got to be used as a last resort tool and to prevent potential harm. And look, in this case, the interest asserted in support of exclusion is for prejudice to ongoing negotiations. And without conveying any details of the paper now, I just want to simply say that my belief is that the ground is not appropriately made out. The content of the paper confirms that the decision we're being asked to make is a yes/no one. And if there is a yes decision, then there are no substantive negotiations contemplated. There's been a price agreed, terms set. So those negotiations have effectively and substantively been completed. And because this paper proposes a strategic purchase of property with ratepayer money, I think we've got to take a really open approach to that decision making. And while I'm attracted to the principle and the concept of the strategic purchase, we're talking about unplanned expenditure for a long-term project, which itself hasn't been subject to any sort of open discussion or even any direction to management to actually go away and investigate it. So I think that given that that's reasonable and appropriate that the contents are open and that public participation should be available and welcome. But just one final point is that I don't want my objection to be interpreted as suggesting that what is being proposed is not above board or is inappropriate. That's certainly not the case. My principal concern is just making sure that we're transparent about what we're proposing to do and why. So for that reason, I intend to vote against the motion. And if the motion is carried, I just wanted to flag early that I would be proposing in a public excluded session to make then a further motion understanding orders to ensure that the proceedings are subsequently disclosed at the relevant point.
Thank you, Sam. Anyone else wish to comment? David, Alan?
So briefly to say that I hold an opposing view. I absolutely acknowledge the points about transparency that Councillor Jennings has raised, and the basic principle I believe this council always adheres to is that there have to be really solid grounds to move into public excluded. The key phrase for me in the resolution is about commercial negotiations. And until there is ink on the page and until the deal is done in terms of any land purchases, to me, that remains a matter of commercial sensitivity, and we expose ourselves to risk, maybe minor, but risk nonetheless, given all the work that's been done so far on this proposal, and there has been a lot. But until the ink is on the page, I believe it would be totally inappropriate to have this in any forum other than public excluded. So for those reasons, I'll be voting to support the resolution.
Yeah, I agree with those sentiments. Also, Councillor Allen, look, I think we, in these instances, and they will pop up from time to time, we need to put our headspace and also the shoes of the potential purchaser, those privateers out there who are potentially exposing some of their assets, their commercial information, and who's to say that each time one of these options come to the table that they are voted down, and to have that on the record of the person who's that councillor trying to engage with, that doesn't do them any favours going forward in the situations that they're in with their land or whatever assets they own. So I think we just need to, while we remain as transparent as we can, and yes, these do get released at the appropriate time, these discussions, I'm happy in this instance to carry on as a public excluded item.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion is in front of, yes, Sam.
Can I just make one final comment then? Then, based on the comments of Councillor Allen and Councillor Bishop, I think the more appropriate interest is that which is in section 7.2.2, which is that it would be likely to unreasonably prejudice the commercial position of the person that supplied or who is subject of the information. So what we're essentially saying is that you're wanting to protect the interest of the vendor rather than council's position, if I'm understanding it correctly. I still don't think that interest is made out in these circumstances, but if that's what Councillor Allen and Councillor Bishop are suggesting, then I think that from a procedurally correct basis, it would be that interest that you would be advancing rather than ongoing negotiations or in addition to ongoing negotiations.
See, David, would you like to make any comment on that?
No, look, I've provided a recommendation to go into committee for the reasons outlined, and I'm happy to support accept the argument that's been provided by the councillors that have spoken for that motion, but nothing further to add.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion is there and it has been put. All those in favour? Against? 2 against. Do you want that recorded?
Yes.
So the recorded, please record, Karen, the votes of Councillor Ketu and Councillor Jennings against the motion. But the motion is carried. We now will move into in committee. And in doing that, we will need to take a 5-minute break just to for technical issues around live streaming and things like that. So again, my stopwatch is on. We will be back in 5 minutes to discuss the topic.
Mm.